Story 1. The $200,000 would absolutely get my situation back on track right now with some money left to spare. So I will take the conservative route on this one and accept that. Story 2. If it is just a one-time offer, I am taking the $200,000 for sure. If I get to press it once, and 3 to 4 of my friends also get a chance, we should all try for the $5 million. Story 3. A 1 in 5 chance of $5 million is worth $1 million. I am selling the button press to the highest bidder for probably at least $800,000. Story 4. I would take the $200,000. It would put me in a financially stable enough situation to have a baby with my wife without any worries. I would not risk that given the opportunity. Story 5. 1/5. The expected value is $1 million, which is more than $200,000. Also, I am in a position where an extra $200,000 would not move the needle significantly, but $5 million would be a big change. Story 6. $5 million in a heartbeat. That's actual life-changing money for my family and my children. I could set them up to have support and go off to do whatever they want for a career. I could retire now and enjoy my family and travel the world. $200,000 isn't even 1 year of combined family income. Story 7. $200,000 is not a life-changing amount for me, so the focus would be on return. If you take $200,000 and invest it with an average 7% annual return, it grows to $1 million after about 24 years. This represents the value of the safe option. If you retire at that point, you can expect about $70,000 annual income from the safe option. If you take the risk, it is worth about $1 million. The odds are 1 in 5, but if it succeeds, you can retire immediately. You could earn an income of $350,000 a year on that same 7% annual return. You could buy a nice home with cash and live out your days doing whatever you want, as long as you limit yourself to the annual return on your investments. Story 8. 80% chance of being depressed does not seem worth it to me. If I were already rich, I would gamble on the $5 million since it is mathematically the better choice. Story 9. There is an 80% chance that you will spend the rest of your life wishing you had just taken the $200,000. I am taking the $200,000. Story 10. Press the button. $200,000, while a great amount of money, would not forever alter the course of my life. Pressing the button has a much higher expected value. With $5 million, you could pay $1 million for a nice house and invest the rest. A standard 4% rule means you could pay yourself $160,000 per year from selling investments. In the United States, long-term capital gains are taxed at a lower rate than income, so you would have more left over than someone making $160,000 per year in salary. This would allow one to retire, though not lavishly. For someone struggling to make ends meet, the $200,000 could be the better option since it would guarantee a better life. Now, if you offered me $10 million versus a 20% chance of $250 million, I would probably take the $10 million. It has a lower expected value but is almost guaranteed to never have to work again. Story 11. I would take the $200,000, invest half into a broad index fund, pay off any debt with the rest, and enjoy the financial flexibility that comes from having real financial slack. Freedom today is better than a maybe tomorrow. Story 12. Tough choice, but I think I am going for the $5 million. $200,000 is not life-changing money. Do not get me wrong, it would be great, but I am not in a place where that amount of money would change my day-to-day life. I would stash it away and forget about it for a while. $5 million, on the other hand, would push me into my next phase of life and early retirement. I would be making some investments, cutting back on working, and living off the combination of reduced income and interest. Story 13. $200,000 would easily solve my financial troubles and put me a long way towards actually being able to retire, instead of my current plan of working until I am dead. Easy choice. Story 14. 1 in 5 chance, $200,000 is not life-changing money. Also, that chance to press the button is worth $1 million, 5 times the value. Story 15. Reframe it. The choice is not 200,000 versus 5 million. It is 100% chance of 200,000 versus 80% chance of nothing. This makes the decision pretty easy. Story 16. Assuming United States $200,000. That would pay off the house and leave plenty to put away in savings. Assuming South African Rand, 200,000 Rand would be nice but would not really make a dent in the house loan. 5 million Rand would be similar to the $200,000 above. Story 17. $200,000 would erase all of our credit card debt, our car loans, and the student loans for both my wife and me. We would still have enough left over to buy something really nice. We would only have our mortgage left after that. I would say that is a winner. Story 18. $200,000 is $20,000 per year in the market long term, not inflation adjusted. 20 years to retirement for me, so that is around $1.3 million when I retire, a salary of around $40,000 to $50,000. Not much, but it might be the difference between working and not working if I have other retirement savings. Story 19. I'm definitely taking the $200,000. $5 million is obviously much better, but I am not guaranteed $5 million. I am guaranteed $200,000, which is $200,000 more than I have right now. Story 20. Statistically, the 1 in 5 chance at 5 million is better. However, humans are not statistical machines, and $200,000 would solve all my financial problems and provide some nice savings. So, to me personally, it is not worth taking the risk. That said, I would not blame anyone for taking the 1 in 5 chance to never work again. Story 21. Definitely the 5 million. I have already got 200,000. It did very little for me. I still have to work. I assume the other one would be just as useless. Story 22. 200,000. I know how I could use that to set myself up. There is an 80% chance of nothing, which leaves me hustling where I am still. Story 23. $200,000 would not change my life, but it would immediately provide me enough of a safety net to take more risks than I have been. I think that would make me far happier than I am. The prize is not the money. It is the opportunities $200,000 would allow me to act on. Story 24. 5 million, 1,000%. An expected value of 1,200,000 would not change anything in my life at the moment. Story 25. Big brain time. The value of 20% odds for 5 million is 1 million, whereas the guaranteed 200,000 is worth 200,000. I am finding an investor to give me 250,000 for a 20% chance to 10 times their money. If I win the 5 million, the investor and I get 2,500,000 each. If I lose, the investor loses his bet of 250,000. I either get 2,750,000 or 250,000. Very few gambles give the player 20% odds of 10 times their bet. Story 26. I would take the $200,000 easily. There is no scenario where I would regret taking the $200,000, and it is very unlikely I would regret making the wrong decision. $200,000 is not a wrong decision. With time, you can grow that $200,000 into $5 million. Maybe. Story 27. Oh yeah, I am probably getting the 200,000. Risk is good and all, but no risk compared to 5 times the risk? That is no question. Story 28. The topic of the question is the diminishing marginal utility of money. This varies for each person's situation. Question for those who say, I will take the 200,000 because otherwise I will probably go home empty-handed. Would you take 200,000 regardless of the potential gambling winnings? What about 10 million instead of 5 million? Or 100 million? Or 1 billion? For what amount would you rather gamble? And a question for those who press the button because the expected value is 1 million and 1 million is greater than 200,000. Would you also gamble if it was 200 million guaranteed versus 5 billion with a 1 in 5 chance? The expected value is 1 billion, and 1 billion is greater than 200 million. I would gamble in the original question, but I would not gamble with 200 million. To me, 200 million and 5 billion are both infinite money. So my point is that taking the safe money would be somewhere in between, but I have no idea where. Story 29. $200,000. I will never know if I would have received $5 million, but I would be painfully aware if I went for it and ended up with zero. $200,000 is life-changing enough, and the regret of losing out entirely would fester in my mind every time I count pennies for groceries. Story 30. I would take the $200,000. I have been making small investments for a couple of years as I do not have enough money to make large ones. I have tripled my invested money during that time. It could have gone better, but unfortunately, I did not have the money to invest in some clear opportunities one saw that ended up being extremely profitable. In short, $200,000 would totally change my life, and I am confident I would be able to multiply it in a few years. I would not have to take the risk of ending up with nothing. Story 31. Yeah, hell no. At this point, I have lived long enough to know how far my luck stretches even with 50-50 odds. It just does not. It is 200,000. Baby. Story 32. $200,000, that is enough to pay off all my loans, and if I did not have to pay those off every month, my finances would be pretty comfortable. Story 33. Take the £200,000. The reason is it is guaranteed, whereas the £5 million is not, so you could end up with nothing. It is not worth the risk. Story 34. Well, I only need about $100,000 to live the rest of my life in comfort, so I would take the $200,000 sure thing. Story 35. Take the money. No question. A guaranteed $200,000 is more than worth an 80% chance of walking away with nothing. Story 36. This is actually close. 200 might move retirement up a few years, which is significant but not life-changing. However, 5 million is truly life-changing. Story 37. 200,000 in the hand is better than 5 million in the bush or something like that. 200,000 would be life-changing for me. It would be enough to clear all my short-term debt and leave me with a small, very manageable mortgage. With the difference the 200,000 would make, there is no way I would gamble it for a 4 or 5 chance of zero. Story 38. The second option. I am financially stable, so I can live with nothing, and that option statistically yields better results. Story 39. 200,000 because it is guaranteed. I used to be an absolute gambling degenerate, and I am past that and still recovering. I know statistically I will probably lose. Like, brother, it is a 100% chance to get 200,000 versus a 20% chance to get 5 million. It is probably more rewarding to invest that or put a huge down payment on a nice house. And so on. Story 40. I would take the sure $200,000 and walk away. I have no need to gamble more than $20 at a time once a year or so. Story 41. $200,000 guaranteed or a 20% chance for $5 million. $200,000 is guaranteed to change my life. A chance at $5 million is an 80% chance that I get nothing. Pretty easy call. Story 42. Oh, take the guaranteed $200,000 over the long shot of $1 million easily. I can do a lot of good with the smaller amount, and I would never forgive myself if I got greedy and came up empty-handed. Story 43. The correct play mathematically is to take the 1 in 5 chance at 5 million. That being said, I would prioritize paying off the $200,000 in student loans. Story 44. $200,000 would pay off my mortgage, and I am still 20 years from retirement. It is a far bigger deal than risking $5 million. Story 45. 200,000. It is more than enough to turn my life around from somewhat tight to fairly comfortable. It would suit me just fine. Story 46. On one hand, I am incredibly lucky, so that part of me says to push the button. On the other hand, I know that my luck evaporates once money is involved. For me, that 1 in 5 chance may as well be 1 in 5 million. Part of me would still want to push the button because 5 million would be far more. However, another part would want to take the 200,000 because it would still be life-changing, and I highly doubt I would win the 5 million. They could probably even give me 5 presses of the button, and I would still lose every time, given how my luck goes when money is involved. In the end, I would probably flip a coin to make my decision. Story 47. The chance at $5 million. If I have the chance at truly life-changing money, I am taking it. If I lose, I am not any worse off than I am now. Story 48. 200,000. Put that much into my mortgage or my superannuation right now, and I am set up for early retirement and a comfortable life. Story 49. 200,000 means I can help my partner with her recovery, and having 4 out of 5 chances of not doing something is unacceptable. Story 50. With $200,000, I could pay off all my debt. My salary goes much further with no debt to pay each month. I will take it. Story 51. $200,000 for sure. $50,000 to pay off all my debts and buy myself something nice, $100,000 for investing, and $50,000 to put on red. My investment is putting it on black. Story 52. I'm taking the gamble. $200,000 would be great and life-accelerating, but not life-changing. $5 million is life-changing. Story 53. Pool with a dozen or more people, all taking the 1 in 5 chance for the 25 times return. Over a large enough group, this will likely average around $1 million each. Story 54. $200,000, and it is not even close. That amount would pay off all my non-mortgage debt and still leave me with plenty of money. Not $5 million, but life-changing nonetheless. Story 55. Press the button because my risk aversion is not great enough to compensate me for foregoing the difference in expected values. 800,000 equals 5 million times 0.2 minus 200,000. Story 56. 1 in 5 chance. This sounds wrong, but that is only because I make more than $200,000. If it gets around 350 or more, I will switch over. Story 57. Push the button. I am near retirement, and $200,000 would not hugely affect my lifestyle, unlike many here, but $5 million would. It would also change my children's lives, as I would give them a good chunk of it. However, I understand the logic of those who do not take the gamble. Story 58. I would take the $200,000 and immediately consult a financial advisor to determine the most efficient way to grow it. Story 59. I would pick the button and take it with me. Infinite money. If that is not an option, I would keep pressing the button. If that is not an option, I would go with the 200,000. Story 60. I would choose 200,000. But what about this? Press a button with a 1 in 5 chance to lose everything, or a 4 in 5 chance to win 5 million. Foolish and greedy, I would press that button. Story 61. To me, it is a big difference if the situation were, I give you $200,000 and then you can spend the $200,000 for a chance to win $5 million. That feels far less appealing than just accepting the $5 million chance from the start, even though it is effectively the same thing. I would not agree to spend $200,000 of my own money on a 20% chance of $5 million, so I should just take the guaranteed money in this hypothetical. It is weird that it is so different in my mind. I imagine there is probably some kind of psychological concept for that. Story 62. $200,000 would really make a huge difference in my quality of life right now. I would take the $200,000 and dream about what might have been, just like I dream about what it would be like to be debt-free now. Story 63. I will be precise and point out that it does not say I have to press it only once, and there is no penalty for pressing it multiple times. Therefore, I will press the button as often as I need. Thank you. Story 64. I have seen my odds when pulling Pokemon cards. I think I would just take the £200,000 as long as student finance cannot take too much. Even if they did, I would still be better off than now. Story 65. Statistically speaking, you should press the button as it is worth 5 times 200,000. Realistically, most people are in such need that they should not risk getting nothing and should just take the 200,000. Assuming no rules, I would probably sell my button press to someone for around 300,000 with a clause stating that if they win, I get 1.5 million. I assume someone wealthy enough would be buying button presses and would be okay paying out. Alternatively, I would outright sell my button press for between 500,000 and 900,000. If there is no market for this, I am not sure what I would do. My gut feeling is to press the button. I am in a good financial position, and 5 million would set my children up for life. 200,000 is nice, and I would start an investment fund, but that is about it. I have 5 people in my family, so hopefully we each get a press. Story 66. Definitely taking my chances. $200,000 would be awesome and help a lot, but it would not set me up for life or anything, just means I can retire a year or two earlier. Whereas if I get that $5 million, I am never working when I do not want to again. Easily worth the risk of getting nothing for me. Story 67. I feel like I could make a lot of things happen with $200,000, so I would just go with that because it is more of a sure thing for me. Story 68. I would take the 5 million. 200,000 is a huge amount, but with my health, it is unlikely I can work again. So 200,000 could last a couple of years. 5 million, on the other hand, is capital. Use 4 million as investments and 1 million for various things. Live off the proceeds. If I have bad luck, I am not worse off than I am now. Story 69. On one hand, I am financially stable enough that I would probably be okay receiving nothing. $200,000 would be nice, but would not radically change my life. I would not stop going to work or anything. Maybe a 2-week trip to some foreign country or something like that, but that's about it. The rest would go toward paying off some of the house and a large emergency fund. $5 million could probably be parlayed into early retirement. People talk about investment and they mean companies, but that is unwise. By property, hire management. I will flip a coin to decide. Heads, I take the $200,000. And it's heads. $200,000 it is. Story 70. $200,000 pays off all current debts, funds my child's college education, and provides a down payment on a small house. That is an instantly life-changing amount of money. Alternatively, I have to roll a 17 or higher on a 20-sided die or I receive nothing. I must accept receiving nothing and explain to my family why I got nothing. Easy choice. Story 71. I will press the button 25 times so I have enough money to not worry about being broke for a long time. Story 72. $200,000 is maybe a couple of years of early retirement, but life still continues unchanged for a few decades. $5 million means my life changes today. I will take the chance. If it fails, life stays the same. Story 73. If it is in the United States, then I will be taxed, and you will probably receive less than half of the $200,000 once the government takes its share. So it is better to gamble for the 5 million. Story 74. $200,000 is still a significant amount of money for me. However, if it were not, I would have taken a 20% chance of $5 million. Story 75. The sure thing. That amount is good enough to turn into $1 million in a few years or more. Story 76. I mean, would you pay $200,000 to press the button? That is really the question. I probably would not. That is too much money for me to risk giving away. Story 77. Press the button. I am good as I am now. 200,000 would be amazing, but nowadays where I live or would like to live, that's not even a house. If I press and lose, I am no worse off than I am now, but a 20% chance to never have to work again, even with a basic investment strategy, is still probably 1,000,000 times more likely than stumbling into a similar situation living my life as I am. Story 78. Oh, I thought 1/5 of the world would get $5 million, so I was going to press that. Probably the $200,000 then. Gamblers never prosper. Story 79. Go play craps, put the table minimum on every number, and tell me if you won money or lost. Give me the button. Damn it. Story 80. That is a tough call. $200,000 would not change my life by any measurable amount. It would only speed up my retirement by a couple of years, whereas $5 million is instant retirement. Story 81. 1 in 5 for 5 million. 5 times the expected return. These odds and returns are significantly better. 200,000 is not even enough to buy a shack, and while it is a lot of money, it is not life-changing for me. If you get 5 million, buy a house for 500,000 to 1 million, depending on where you live. Put the rest in an investment account, and you can live off the investment return every year for life. Even with an absolutely minimal risk investment strategy and a 5% return per year, that is already $200,000 to $225,000 per year with just the principal. Story 82. 200,000. Many of us are barely getting by, so I think most of us would take the 200,000 rather than take a chance on 5 million. Story 83. You could reach 5 million pretty quickly with a $200,000 head start. It will take less time to reach 5 million from $200,000 than it would take from $0 to $200,000. Story 84. Really hard decision. $200,000 is life-changing. could mean I retire 5 years early, but $5 million is quit my job tomorrow. There is a 20% chance of that. I might take it. Story 85, $200,000 in a second. I would pay off every bill except my mortgage and still have a good amount left for savings. It is a no-brainer. Story 86. I would take the button press and sell a contract for 50% of the proceeds after I press it for $400,000. Many investors would pay that for a 20% chance at a 6.2 times return in a broader derivatives portfolio. Story 87. If you are in debt, have less than $100,000, or less than approximately $300,000 above age 40, take the $200,000. Otherwise, risk the $5 million. The payoff is good, but the risk should be based on how impactful the $200,000 is to your wealth. If you have $1 million, you do not need that $200,000. $5 million will change your life forever. Story 88. It is best to think about this proposition as gambling $200,000 for a 20% chance of getting 25 to 1 on your money. Story 89. Pressing the button is the obvious answer, and anyone who does not have an affordable surgery or other expenses to cover and takes the $200,000 is somewhat unwise. Story 90. This really depends on how comfortable you already are. I would try for the 5 minutes because that might change my life. Story 91. I would choose the option that gives me no money but guarantees I never have to see this question again. Story 92. I would not have to lose my house if I got $200,000. I am fine taking that sure bet over the 20% possibility of getting $5 million. Story 93. Mathematically, I know the bet is a good one, but I am taking the $200,000. It will cover half of my child's upcoming college costs. Story 94. $200,000 would be a nice boost, but I am okay if I miss out on it. Translating it to income at about a 5% return, that is an extra $10,000 a year. Nice, but not a huge difference. I will play the odds and shoot for the $5 million or $250,000 a year. Thank you. Story 95. 200,000. 5 million is more than I would know what to do with. But with 200,000, I would buy a 2-acre lot, build a nice house, and then live in it. Story 96. $200,000 is life-changing for me, but I am surviving as it is right now. $5 million would be more than life-changing. It would mean a lot more. So I am gambling as I would be no worse off than I am today. Story 97. The odds are very favorable to go for the $5 million. If you get $200,000, you have a nice start to a retirement but still need to work for years. $5 million is instant retirement territory. Story 98. The expected value of the $5 million option with a 20% chance of success is $1 million. It is objectively the right choice. That said, I totally understand why people would pick the $200,000 option. Story 99. $200,000. I wouldn't be able to live with myself knowing I had the opportunity to walk away with enough money to pay off my current debt, pay off my house, and make all the renovations I want, but I wasted it on a 20% chance to multiply that amount by 25 times. $200,000, while not being enough to disregard future concerns, is enough to relieve a lot of stress from my shoulders right now. Story 100. Whether the average person in an average financial situation, where all things are equal, should pick one or the other is a matter of probability and easy to figure out. The smart money is obviously to pick the button. Whether a 20% chance at $5 million on a single button press is a smarter choice than a guaranteed $200,000 for any specific person, in a specific situation with specific financial restrictions and liabilities, is not a matter of probability but rather a more complicated personal calculation. Story 101. You would have to lower the $200,000 to about $10,000 to make this more equal. $200,000 would solve most people's financial problems to the point that no matter how big the second number is, $200,000 guaranteed would be better. My wife and I are currently house hunting, and the thought of being able to just have $200,000 to put down on a house is incredible. We are currently looking in the $250,000 to $300,000 range, so with that we could either get a nice $300,000 house only going $100,000 into debt, or go up to $500,000 and have about the same debt we would have going for a $300,000 house. Story 102. chance for $5 million. $200,000 is a lot, but it is not set for life money. After you use it to pay off debts or finance other large purchases like a car, you will still be working every day for the rest of your life. $200,000 will not save you from struggling within the financial system. $5 million would get you out of the system. $5 million at a 7 to 10% annual return nets you approximately $500,000 for doing nothing. That is set for life money, and you could stop working tomorrow if you are smart with planning your finances and savings. Story 103. This is a really good question. Original poster, good on you. There are different ways people treat money when it is at different scales. For small amounts of money, probably under $10 for most people, people are willing to spend it as if it is nothing. Some people are willing to spend cash on a lottery ticket with a very small chance of winning a large jackpot. When it is large, life-changing money like $200,000 for most people, they want security and are willing to take that instead of a chance at a big jackpot. In economic terms, that is the law of diminishing returns in action. In the original poster's example, the first $200,000 is extremely useful for improving the family's most pressing living needs. The next $200,000 will be used for some luxuries and longer-term financial planning. By the time we are talking about the difference between $4.8 million and $5 million, the usefulness is much less than that of the first $200,000. Story 104. I already live paycheck to paycheck. That amount can pay off the debt I have, which is not much, and then I could start finding a way to save. Story 105. I was explaining to someone recently that having $200,000 is not a lot of money. On the other hand, getting $200,000 would be awesome. Story 106. $200,000 can eliminate all of my debt and give my wife, son, and me a real chance to live a better life. I am not going to waste that opportunity purely out of greed. Story 107. The expected value of pressing the button is 1,000,000 times 5. So the game theory optimal play is to press the button. However, assuming this is a one-time opportunity, if 200,000 is life-changing for you, then a 100% chance of improving your life is better. Story 108. It does not say how many times you can press the button. I would exploit this and repeatedly press the button. It also does not specify how many times you are allowed to press it. Infinite money glitch. If this was not clear, I am currently under the influence. I have not used any substances for about 2 months. Edit. I am so out of it. The second point about how many times you can win money from the button depends on the first point. Story 109. Assuming everything is fair, I would go with the greater expected value of a 1 in 5 chance for $5 million for 2 reasons. 1. Much better expected value of 20% times $5 million is greater than 100% times $200,000, as $1 million is greater than $200,000. My wife and I are not in money trouble at the moment and earn around $200,000 per year. While an extra $200,000 would be great, it would not be life-changing money. We would not quit our jobs, move to a bigger house, send kids to private schools, or really do anything different. We would probably just put it towards the house, student loans, with the rest into a retirement fund. Our mortgage is at 2.25% from refinancing in 2020, so we would probably not pay that off when banks are now giving more than that in interest. Maybe with less money stress and more money earning interest, we could justify spending more on vacations, fun events, or home upgrades. However, I think for the most part nothing would really change with $200,000 versus $0. On the other hand, $5 million would be life-changing money where we could quit our jobs or not, buy a better house, choose to fly first class and splurge on vacations, help out family, upgrade our cars without feeling guilty about being wasteful, or send kids to private school. Story 110. Dollars or my currency. Because $200,000 sets me up for life. My currency means 7 or 8 months of work. I would take the gamble. Story 111. It's like you have $200,000 and someone told you to bet all the money to win $1 million. Nobody with a decent mind would do that. Story 112. Honestly, these comparisons are not exactly fair. Mathematically, taking the 20% chance of 5 million is always the better choice. Purely mathematically. However, it obviously only matters with large numbers. The problem is that many cannot afford to risk getting nothing. For example, for the wealthy, 200,000 is barely going to make a dent. However, 5 million would be significant. So, for them, it is always the 5 million option since 200,000 is practically the same as nothing. For the poor, however, 200,000 is already life-changing. They cannot afford to squander this opportunity and should always pick the 200,000, despite it being the lesser option. Story 113. The irony is that people who do not need $5 million are more likely to press it, while everyone else with regular jobs will probably press 200. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.